and hello. I am here today with this ancient Greek lad because I am ready to talk about dark academia and review 3 books. But before I begin the reviews, what exactly is dark academia? Dark academia has become a popular social media aesthetic and a trend in recent fiction. The Secret History by Donna Tartt, released in 1992, is often seen as the originator of this trend. If you take a cursory glance online, you can see the motifs of dark academia are 20th century inspired, collegiate fashion, Gothic architecture, and the evocation of classical literature and poetry. For the purposes of this video though, I am talking about 3 books that centre on young people in college settings as opposed to books that might be considered dark academia in aesthetic like Frankenstein or the Bronte novels. The stories that I'm talking about often feature slightly purple prose, references to Greco-Roman classics, or Western classical literature. The appeal of the aesthetic and the existence of dark academia in fiction are quite different. While the aesthetic seems to venerate these institutions, the trend in fiction seems to take a more cautious stance, one that is more interested in what lies beneath these glossy surfaces. I read The Secret History for the first time in 2011, so a solid decade ago, but it left quite the impression. I think that The Secret History really sticks in people's minds because it creates an image that is so strong, partially because it draws on so many pre-existing works and notions. I personally really enjoyed this book, but I also know people who absolutely hated it. This is not a book that you'll enjoy if you need likable characters to get into a story. But if you are intrigued by ancient Greek rites in the woods, New England colleges, and 20-somethings who seem kind of corrupt and evil, then it's the kind of book for you. Obviously, you have an unlikable group of privileged people who are obsessed with sophistication and these ancient ideas. Some of the flaws with The Secret History include Donna Tartt's incredibly weird take on male sexuality. In every one of her books, she does something very strange, and I'm not gonna say what it is. I am simply going to say, why, Donna? Why do you do this thing? Why? I think that The Secret History is really good for the reason that it creates a very poignant image in your mind, and it has great structure. Ultimately, this is a story that's very neatly structured. You know that a murder has occurred in the first few words. And not only that, you have a sense that people involved and the concepts that are going to be explored are a little strange, to say the least. You are suspending some disbelief going into The Secret History. You are believing that New England college students do Greek rites in the woods and that they might kill their friends. The main character of The Secret History is a very Nick Carraway type of figure. He essentially observes and is maybe complicit in some of the darker things that happen in the story, but you don't get a whole bunch of sense for his personality beyond his obsession with a female character. His obsession with this character is honestly not that intriguing. It does serve us as readers because you do understand why he is so obsessed with this group of people and so willing to be a participant in the things that they do. The Secret History, to me, is a book that is about the very obsession that you see in dark academia itself. People are very intrigued by the pristine institutions with their neoclassical architecture and their ancient Greek labs, and they want to see it. I mean, if you search on YouTube just college reactions, you will find a lot of obsession with these kind of almost name brands of universities. As a culture, we are very taken in by this kind of image of what it means to attend a higher institution, and particularly one that confers certain privileges upon its students or is associated with some kind of old world ideal. A lot of the old world ideals are very inherent to Donna Tartt's works in general. I think that they tend to focus on things that are classical in nature, whether it be the painting in the Goldfinch, which is a Dutch master, or the ancient Greek philosophy that is sown throughout the secret history. There is a lot of pretentiousness with this as well, and it is one of the things that is a problem with maybe the fixation on dark academia. Some people are fixated on dark academia because it promises the same things that the secret history debunks. The Secret History is a good work because it suggests that there is something inherently corrupt about these schools and these people. And I think that that is worthwhile, particularly in a culture that increasingly venerates these kinds of institutions. But dark academia promises something that a lot of us might not experience, something that we might dream of experiencing, or wonder if our lives might be better if we experienced it, which is to say, we wonder about those large, ancient-looking libraries. We wonder about the gilded spines and the molded ceilings, what it would mean to be a part of these institutions, to be one of the pretty and affluent people who flock the halls in their tweed coats. Of course, all of this is imaginary, but it lives inside us as a cultural image of the East Coast American liberal arts institution. I'm going to say The Secret History is a good book, and I would fully recommend it. Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo is a more recent read than The Secret History in that I did read it this decade. I read Ninth House just after I'd finished college, and in no way did it remind me of my college experience, except for some of the experiences that the protagonist goes through. As someone coming from a poorer neighborhood in Los Angeles, she is perhaps, or might think, that she's not the kind of person who should be in Yale. She sticks out in her own mind, and there is certainly a type of person who seems to fit. I think that the idea of focusing in a dark academia story on an outsider and somebody who wants to be part of something more or fix their life is deeply interesting. It's what's interesting about The Secret History. And while Alex Stern is for sure no Richard Papin, she does have a role to play in this institution, and she is experiencing what it means to be an outsider and perhaps wonder what it would be like if she fit in a little more, and if this is the kind of place that accepted her. I think that there is something very poignant about dark academia for young adults, because there is a huge question of acceptance, and you are thinking about coming of age in these institutions. It's certainly a lot of our stories growing up. I know that I came of age in a higher education institution. It's certainly not everybody's path, but a lot of us are entering these types of places and knowing what it means to be an outsider in a higher education institution. While I did not attend Yale and I attended UC San Diego, I was still very much a small minority in that school, and being part of 600 Black students definitely gives you a sense of what it's like to feel like an institution was not built for you. Alex Stern does live in that space that interests me most about this area of literature. There is something very interesting about coming of age in a place that does not accept you and that you do not belong to. There are a lot of loaded ideas and images, which is why this genre succeeds today. I think that Ninth House handles Alex Stern as a character quite well, but it does drop the ball in several other places Without spoiling it too much, there are some problems with Ninth House, including its handling of campus sexual assault. I think that this could have been a more interesting part of the story, and other forms of abuse and assault are handled better. This, I don't think, was handled that well, but perhaps I am more sensitive to it. Secret History and Ninth House did a number of things that a lot of dark academia does. They're set in New England colleges with young people who are kind of corrupt, kind of messy, hiding things, having secrets. The supernatural element of Ninth House and the murder element of The Secret History are simply what they have to add to explore what is rotten at the foundation of these pristine places. Now, given everything I've said so far, it would appear that I would have some good things to say about a story that focuses on Black and Indigenous people of colour's experiences in these kinds of institutions. I mean, what are we here for if not to see the dark side of academia? That's how I personally take this genre to be. I don't venerate the setting. I think that part of the appeal is the corruption. So when I heard about Catherine House and it having a Black author who had been to Yale and was going to explore some of these issues, I thought, this is amazing, this is great, and I couldn't wait to read it. Was Catherine House the dark academia book of my dreams? It was not, and I will tell you why. Catherine House was largely plotless, but more offensively, it didn't get into themes with any kind of depth. I think that a lot of literary fiction is largely plotless, but one of the things that you do get is a good sense of the characters, what drives them, why they're doing the things they're doing, and you get depth on these questions about the setting, the people, and why they do what they do. Catherine House really didn't have any deep questions that it asked or answered about academic settings or about being an outsider in those institutions. It didn't seem interested in engaging in a conversation about them, and it is certainly no prerequisite for a diverse work to get into topics of diversity and inclusion and equity. But when you're expecting a book to at least have either a plot and compelling story or deep ideas explored, and it does neither, then you do have a problem. Catherine House fundamentally didn't do much beyond build atmosphere. I mean, the writer is certainly talented enough to give us this rich atmosphere. When you're reading this book, you do feel like you are in that world. But that world isn't really that interesting. The sci-fi elements are weak at best and kind of feel like they came from a film somewhere. It seems like the deeper topics that were developing about it being a cult-like environment really weren't that interesting overall, and you didn't get a lot out of it. The main character was aimless and was frustrating to read. The lack of dynamic characters and the lack of interesting conversations explored is what went wrong with Catherine House, and it's why Catherine House wasn't that great. It really didn't succeed as a dark academia book because it seemed like the whole point of it was just to have dark academia vibes, which leads me on to my final point. Why I think that dark academia is a valuable trend. My thoughts on The Secret History, Ninth House, and Catherine House aside. Side note, there's a lot of houses in dark academia. I think less houses would be good going forward. Take notes. Take notes. I think that dark academia is an intriguing trend because as a culture, as a society, and as individuals, we do have this allure that we feel when we think about these institutions. We are obsessed with how things look. At the minute, I think the translation of this kind of dark and corrupt academic world that was explored in The Secret History into Instagrammable photos of libraries, that trend, I think that that is really rooted in an issue that I will call the Twin Peaks problem. The Twin Peaks problem is essentially when works that are inspired by something take all of the aesthetic qualities of it and are inspired by those qualities, but completely forget why those aesthetic qualities were employed. The aesthetic qualities of dark academia are employed to suck us into the world and to reveal its corruption and the problems within it. These institutions do have a number of issues, whether it be equity on campus, sexual assault and Title IX, or in fact just the long legacy of slavery and how it has funded these institutions. You have a dark foundation, fundamentally. Academia is deeply flawed, and I'm saying this as someone who is interested in legal academia as a career. There is something deeply flawed in these institutions, these structures. There is a big problem with the fact that it seems like a requisite to attend one of these institutions to make a sustainable living in today's world, and the competitiveness in the process. There is a huge issue with these things, and I think that fiction often takes these issues from our real world and works through them in interesting ways. Dark academia could be great in fiction as a sort of subgenre or trend because we do have a lot of issues to explore when it comes to academic institutions and their cultural meaning. And so I look forward to more books coming out that are dark academia if they are exploring the darkness and not just the pretty libraries. And now I'm going to go and have my rosé. Goodbye.